Second part. It was Wesley who remarked, "This is odd." Having thought the same thing for a while now, Meg nodded agreement in her heart of hearts. Though they'd been walking for a good 3 hours, there was no sign of the exit. Worse yet, it didn't really feel like they'd been walking, or rather, that they'd gained any ground. It almost felt as if they were walking on a treadmill, moving in the opposite direction at exactly the same speed. When they turned around, however, the entrance they'd used had long since vanished. Still, they managed to continue walking because the walls, which seemed to be made of ordinary stone, gave off a pale blue glow. Could it be we'll be stuck in this tunnel forever? No sooner had that foolish worry sprouted in Meg's mind than Wesley exclaimed, "Let's take a rest," and crumpled to the floor. "Not looking too sharp there, Sheriff," Cowboy told the huffing and puffing young man in a judgmental tone. "But then, there just seems to be no freaking end to this. It's draining, both physically and mentally." On seeing the way the bounty hunter propped his left hand against the wall, Meg grew twice as anxious. If that was the state the two men were in, all she could do was keep on plugging. "I don't know anything about the interior of the island, but I've heard how large it's supposed to be," the girl said. "The rough estimate is about 42 square miles. Think of a circle less than 7.5 miles in diameter. If we were going at a rate of 2.5 miles per hour, hell, we should already be off the island by this point." "Maybe it runs clean to the far end of the island," Wesley said, looking up at Meg. Though his voice was steady, it was immediately clear he was pushing himself. It was on account of those teeth. The towel around his shoulder was stained deep red, and even now the little monster that no longer had a brain or a heart was drinking his blood in accordance with the will of the nobility. "The island's mostly flat," Meg countered. "The only mountains on it are on the southern coast. I doubt this tunnel is even 6 miles long. But it's not like we can turn back at this point. We got no choice but to push on." Meg nodded. It was a moot discussion. Indeed, they had no choice but to keep going. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I'm good," Wesley said, getting to his feet. "It's rough not having anything to eat or drink, though. We've got to get out of here, and soon." Cowboy's casual remark once again ignited Meg's fears. "We've got to get out of here. But what if we can't? We'll end up starving to death in this tunnel." As if to banish her fears, Meg started to walk point for the party. "What in the—" she exclaimed, halting after she'd gone about 10 paces. Up ahead there lay what looked to be a human figure. "Who is it?" "Lancer," Cowboy replied, his rifle over his shoulder. Meg strained her eyes. His short spear lay atop his stomach. She finally realized where the bounty hunter had gotten his name. The girl was about to step forward when Cowboy stopped her by saying, "Lancer, can you hear me?" There was no response. He asked again, and then a third time, all to the same result. "All right, then." A roar echoed down the tunnel. Sparks leapt right by Lancer's head. Amid the echoes, the face that had been pointed toward the ceiling slowly turned in the trio's direction. It was indeed the short spear specialist. "Recognize me, Lancer? It's me, cowboy." The man's elongated face nodded. "You bastards ran off on us. I don't know what happened in here, but it seems like you've really been through the ringer. Serves you right, too." Lancer raised his right hand and beckoned to the other man. He then pointed to his throat and opened and closed his mouth repeatedly. He couldn't speak. The other three exchanged looks. Could he be trusted? They were dealing with the nobility here, so there was no telling what might have happened to Lancer. "Let's go. And keep your gun on him just like you've got it now." And saying that, Wesley stepped forward. When he was within 15 feet, Wesley halted and asked, "Can you talk?" After a fashion, came the reply in the wasted tone of a centenarian. "What happened?" "We went through the forest while you folks were gone, and ended up here. Then it was into the tunnel. But no matter how far we walked, we couldn't see the exit. That jerk Bo got pissed off and said he was going to turn back. So we told him to do whatever the hell he liked. He took off on his own, and the rest of us kept going. And then Meg let out a small cry. Something white drifted up ahead. The fog rolled in. Lancer murmured faintly, "Watch yourselves. Either keep within arm's reach of one another, or call out to keep track of everyone's location. Stick together," said Cowboy. Meg braced the harpoon in her right hand for action, and used her left to hold onto Wesley's arm. Their surroundings were bleached white. We started walking through the fog. Lancer continued in a tone that sounded gloomy. Swirling white mist swallowed his form, then the trio. Meg listened intently. She had great confidence in her hearing. When waiting for her prey on calm seas, she had to be able to hear the sound of a fin breaking the surface, or catch the splash of a leaping fish. She'd hear a pebble fall if it were within 50 yards of her. And after we walked plenty, from up ahead, sound vibrated against her eardrums. Not just one, countless little sounds, footfalls. They closed on us. Many, so many, closing on us fast, so fast. You'd think they'd been waiting for us. Lancer must have still been there, and he continued speaking. "There's a ton of them coming." By the time Meg's words reached her two companions, so had the sound of the footsteps. Wesley drew his gun and shouted into the depths of the white fog, "Halt! I'm a sheriff. Halt! Or I'll shoot." The footsteps didn't stop. To the contrary, they broke into a run. "Here they come." "Run for it," Wesley exclaimed, turning around. Grabbing Meg's left hand, he dashed forward. He could sense Cowboy right beside them and hear his footfalls. "We ended up getting separated," Lancer continued. "He just went on and on. I fought them, and I stabbed a few to death, and then I dropped. Not that I was wounded. Out of hunger." Meg suddenly noticed something. Where was Lancer's voice coming from? Right by her ear. It couldn't be that he was following her, could it? Suddenly, there was a great weight on the girl's back. A hoarse voice whispered in her ear, "I'm hungry. Give me something. Some hot blood." Her whole body trembled. "No," Meg screamed, but cold breath fell on the nape of her neck. Next, a gunshot rang out. The weight on Meg's back jerked hard to the right, then vanished. You okay? The smell of gunpowder came from the same direction as Wesley's voice. I'm fine, but Lancer's become one of the nobility. I know. The fog broke for a second, and I saw his face. He was sporting fangs. I sure am, Lancer said, his voice falling down at them from overhead. Meg's ears alone caught the sound of something knifing through the air. Not that she realized it was a spear. The horizontal slash she made with her harpoon was purely out of reflex. The clang of them coming together was rather light, but there was the sound of something heavy hitting the road not far off. Take that, the girl exclaimed, thrusting out with the harpoon with all her might. Even before she heard the cry of pain, she felt it make contact, and she heard the sound of someone falling after she'd run another 15 or 20 feet. The footsteps were still following them. They must have run at least 100 yards already. Suddenly, Meg's feet tangled. Staggering, she let go of Wesley's arm. Wesley? Over here. A voice called off to her right. The way it seemed 100 yards off made Meg's hair stand on end. It was a second later that the voice became a scream. The unmistakable sound of a body being pierced had come from Wesley's position. There was a beastly cry from the lawman as the sound of his footfalls grew chaotic. The thud of his fall echoed, and the sight of the end of the spear that was stuck in him somewhere skimmed briefly across the girl's retinas. Wesley, where are you? Meg cried, but the very instant she started to her ride, she was enveloped by a bluish darkness. It must have been evening. Meg was standing in a forest, and though the distance between the trees was so great, it might have been more accurate to call it some woods. Meg looked up. The moon was out. How in the world? What am I doing out here? And Wesley? She turned around, but there was just more of the woods. Both the tunnel and Wesley had vanished completely. No. There could be no doubt they were even now locked in a deadly battle back in the world of the White Mist. It was Meg who'd vanished. That short spear. He was more than 100 yards away. So, that's Lancer's power, is it? There was no one there to answer her. The world continued to shout at Meg, "You're on your own. Try to make it through alone." Second part, end.